Here's our fifth activity for parallel and perpendicular lines. When you get done with this activity, then it'll be time for you to be doing a progress check, and we'll take a look at that after you get done with this activity. We'll do a progress check. So this activity also is going to require that you keep the iPad in front of you. There is no worksheet for this. This isn't out of the book. You're going to have to take this right directly off the video and work with the video. So it'll probably be several times where you'll just need to pause the video to do your work, and then you can start the video again to keep going. So to start with here, I'm going to start you out on the first problem. And I have three different polygons here. So we're going to start with the polygon here that's in black. That's labeled A, B, C, D. And the question one says, how can we prove the polygon above is a rectangle? So the properties of rectangles are as follows. That rectangles have opposite sides which are parallel. And rectangles have four 90-degree angles. 90-degree angles are perpendicular. So how would we just prove that this above that polygon is a rectangle? Well, take a look at the hint that I've given you. We have that we want to find the four slopes of the four sides. So that's going to be something we need to do. We've got to find the slopes of the four sides. Then if they're parallel, they have the same slope as we've worked with already. And if sides are perpendicular, they have opposite signs and numbers are reciprocal. So that's what we need to determine here to help us figure out, is this a rectangle or not? Well, if it's a rectangle, then side AB, because they're labeled by the corners, side AB and side CD should have the same slope. So take out your paper, and I'm going to shift here to a piece of paper. And at the top of that paper, why don't you put this label up there? Lesson 5, parallel and perpendicular lines. Okay, put that title up there. And then we'll take a look together a little bit how we're going to figure out to start with. So find the slopes of the four sides. We're going to have to do that. If the sides are parallel, they have the same slope. So let's write down those sides that are parallel, AB and CD. So on my paper now, let's see here. I'm going to look for parallel. I'm checking for parallel. So let's write down here parallel sides. So let's put the heading parallel sides. And then now on the paper, let's write down that which sides we're working with. So we're going to be working with AB and CD. So on your paper, why don't you write down AB, and we put a little line over it to signify side AB, and we're going to say that M equals, we're going to find its slope, and then we have side CD, which is the bottom, and we're going to find its slope. So that's what you might want to do. You might want to pause the video here now and go back here, and at this point, take a look at the figure. Look at side AB, count its slope, because that's the nice thing about the grid. When people outside of school are trying to determine the shape of something, often they'll just impose a grid on top of it. They'll put points on it, they'll count slopes, or they'll use formulas for distances. So why don't you count the slope now of side AB, write it down, count the slopes for side CD. Make sure you pause the video before you start writing or keep going. So pause the video now and write those down. Okay, welcome back. Now we have to look at the other pair of sides. We have BC and AD. So let's look over here. I would then on your paper over here, I'm going to take a look then at side BC and side BC and side AD. So we're going to find those slopes now. And why don't you put BC, slope equals, AD, slope equals. So we're trying to find out, are these two the same? So if you take a look at your paper, if the same numbers here, we know that sides AB and CD are parallel from one another. And then let's take a look at sides BC and AD, write down their slopes here, and see if you get the same number for these slopes. Pause the video, count the slopes, put down your answers on your paper. Okay, now that you've written down those answers, you've got answers here and here on these two blanks and here. If the numbers for A, B, C, D are the same and the numbers for B, C, A, D are the same, if both pairs have same numbers here and here, that means you have parallel sides on both sides of this polygon. But in order to be rectangular, you have to have 90-degree angles. There is such a thing called a parallelogram that has parallel sides, but it doesn't have perpendicular angles. So we need to go back to our picture here, and now we got to figure out the perpendicular corners. So let's take a look now. We have your slopes up here. Let's find out the corners, or let's write down our corners for perpendicular. So let's go back to our paper. We're going to have corner AD and a side AB. So this is actually so we got to get down these two slopes, AD and AB. That would be the first pair to compare. So I'm going to put on my paper now, I'm going to put a new heading here, and I'm going to say that it's going to be perpendicular sides. So let's put a new heading called perpendicular sides there on this. Okay, so let's take a look and let's go back to our picture now. And again, I believe we said we're going to do AD and AB. So on our paper, let's write down side AD, and we're going to say that its slope equals, and then we have side AB, and we need to show that its slope equals. So that's one pair of perpendicular sides. Okay, maybe. We got to check their slopes on it. Another pair of sides that could possibly be perpendicular would be AB and BC. AB and BC. So let's put that pair down on our paper, that we have AB. We're going to check AB, and we're going to say its slope is to side BC. And we're going to write down its slope. And then let's go back. I'm going to scroll down here. Let's go back. We got more corners because there's 4 corners. That means we have 4 to compare. So we got to compare BC to CD. BC to CD. So let's write that down on our paper. Again, if I'm going too fast, be sure that you pause the video. BC slope equals, and then we're going side CD, and its slope equals. So we've got 1, 2, 3 corners. A rectangle has 4 corners. We can't cheat the last corner. We don't want to leave it feeling sorry. So we have to do AD compared to CD. Last pair. So side AD to side CD. So the slope of AD is equal to that. Slope of side CD. All right. So what you need to do, and when this is an easy thing to do, notice you don't have to recount those slopes. Why? Because you have all of the answers for those slopes up here with your parallel work. So take the number for a side AB, its slope, and everywhere down here, write down, here's AB, take this number up here, put it down here, then put it over here. Take the answer for BC and copy it down where you have BC down below. Take the answer for CD and copy it down here. And then take the answer for AD and copy it down here. Why don't you pause the video and get all those numbers written down, and then we'll come back to it again. Thanks for pausing the video. Now here's what we need to do. Let's look at the numbers. You need to look at your numbers that are here and here, these two. Look at this first pair, AD and AB. Do you have something with opposite signs and the reciprocal? Now, what do I mean by that? Well, an example of something that would be perpendicular would be like if I have one side is a negative 3/2, then the perpendicular slope would be a positive 2/3. That would be something you might want to see in here if you have pairs that look like that. Or do you have pairs that look like this? Do you have pairs that look like and say, well, I have one side is a slope of -3. What's the reciprocal of 3? The reciprocal is, this is like 3/1. I could actually put underneath here. You have to remember -3 is like an imaginary over 1 underneath it. So what's the reciprocal of that? That means I flip those numbers, 1/3. So now I have positive 1/3. So I need something that's like a -3 and a positive 1/3. Maybe I have something like this, something that starts out one slope is a positive 2. Well, what does that then mean? Well, it means that the other slope is negative because this one was positive. And again, since this is just a plain 2, I have to remember that there's an imaginary 1 written underneath here. So then that means I'm going to flip these two numbers. So that's a 1/2. So you're looking for one of these types of situations written in your answers. You have to have this situation in all four pairs. And if you do, if you have all four pairs that are opposite sign with reciprocal numbers, and all the sides, opposite sides are parallel, you have a rectangle. So take a look at your evidence. And if you think it's a rectangle, then you need to write down, yes, rectangle ABCD is, yes, polygon ABCD is a rectangle. That's what you'd write. Yes, polygon ABCD is a rectangle. That's all you need to write there. So pause the video here. Then we're going to do some more work with this. Number 2 says write the equations for all four sides of the rectangle in slope-intercept form. I want you to take a look and write those equations. So how do we do that? Well, I got a hint here for you. First, you're going to find the slope. You've done that. You have all the slopes that you need. Write a point slope equation. Then turn the point slope equation into slope-intercept form. Okay, so let's go back to our paper. So we got the parallel sides, the perpendicular sides. We've written down that whether yes or no, it's a rectangle or not. Now we're going to put down the equations for the four sides. So let's put down a heading, and let's type that down, and that we're going to write the equations for the, oops, I forgot number 2, didn't I? So for number 2, equations for the four sides. All right, so how do we start this? Well, I'm going to start first of all, and I'm going to take my pencil, and I'm going to, let's see, I want to get it black, and I'm just going to pick a side. It doesn't matter which side I pick, but since I'll do it alphabetical, I'm going to deal with side AB, side AB. So on my paper, as I hinted to you, find the slope, which you've done. We're going to write a point slope equation. Well, if you don't remember the point slope formula, let me write it here for you. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So there's our point slope formula. That's our point slope formula. Point slope. Point slope. All right, point slope formula. So start with them on your paper. Put down this label, side AB. All right, so looking at side AB, I have 2 points there, don't I? These are on a grid. You should be able to count these. You should take a look and figure out, here's my points. You've already counted the slope. Already counted the slope. So now we just need to pick one of those 2 points. It doesn't matter which. I can pick point A and use its coordinate, or I can pick point B and use its coordinate. You just need to count in your graph, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is -5 going up there. And I got to count 1, 2, and so on. Pick one point. So pause the video. Going back to your paper. You got to pick one point. Find your slope for AB, and you have that written up here either in your parallel, it's right here, or it's right here in your perpendicular. Fill your slope in for M. You have your coordinate, and if I were you, I would put down the coordinate. I would write that down. So like for example, let's go back. I have here, I've got -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is actually the coordinate -5, 10. So I'm going to go back over here, and I have the coordinate for point B. So B is equal to the coordinate -5, +10. And now I have a slope, and you need to take your slope from above. So that -5, that's going to be your x1. 10 is going to be your y1. Take my slope from above. Here's a slope for AB. You probably have that on your paper. You can see it. Take this slope for AB. You're going to put it into the point slope formula now. Put -5 in for x1. Put 10 in for y1. And put your slope in for m. And then you will have a point slope formula. After that, I want you to do what you have done before. I want you to change that into a slope-intercept form equation. Change that into a slope-intercept form equation. So to take it a little further, whoops, go back here. You're going to have a point slope formula. You've gotten this in for x1, this in for y1, and you've written your slope. distribute. So for example, if I write this in, I'd have y, and I've got y1 is 10, so it's minus 10, equals, and you need to take the slope for AB from your paper. My slope is going to go right there. When I go back, I'll count it quick. Let me count it quick. So up 2 and right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Up 2, did I count that correctly? Yep, up 2 and over 7. Up 2 and over 7. So I have a slope of up 2 over 7. X minus, oh, a negative, so I get to change that to a plus 5. All right, here we go. Here we go. So now I want to change that next into slope-intercept. So you would then distribute 2/7, and then now 2/7 times 5, that means do the top number 2 times 5 and put it over 7. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go y minus 10 equals 2/7 x, multiply there, plus 10/7. Oh, our buddy fractions. Aren't they just wonderful sometimes? So here we go. We're going to add 10 to both sides, plus 10. Oh boy, 10/7 plus 10. Well, if you want to, you can certainly take a calculator. The other thing to do is I can take 10, and I can take that times 7 over 7, and I got the 7 from the denominator. 7 over 7 equals 1. So that equals 70 over 7. And I'm going to take 10/7 plus 70/7 gives me 80/7. And I'm going to write y equals, because this cancels, 2/7 x plus, and then I have 80/7. So you can leave it just like that. So that's what we're up to. So I want you to write, I've actually now written one of the equations for you. You only have 3 more to write. So pause the video at this point and write the equations for the other 3 sides of that polygon on the front side. So write the equations for the other 3 sides here. If you need to, you may have to go back and forth on the video. You may have to slide it a little back on the iPad just to get, so you can see the picture here. So that way you can go back to your paper. In fact, I'll pause. I will stop talking here for a little bit. You have your numbers on your paper already in front of you, so we'll leave it right here. Pause the video here, and that'll allow you to do your finding of your points for your equations. Now that you've finished your work for your equations, why don't you bring those to me, and so I can take and show you the answer key for that, and you can check your answers. Once you finish checking your answers, then we'll move on to the red triangle over here on the right. So for number 3, prove that the red triangle is a right triangle. What do you remember about the degrees of a right triangle, of a right angle? I'm sorry, what do you remember about the degrees of a right angle? That's right, right angles have 90 degrees to them. Over on the left of the screen, there's a reminder for you about what 90-degree angles are. Remember, 90-degree angles are perpendicular. So what I'm looking for, if I want to have a triangle and I want to determine if it's a right triangle, I have to find a right angle. So take a look at that triangle. How can I find a right angle? Well, if their sides are perpendicular, I should be able to find a couple of slopes and figure out if I have sides that are opposite and reciprocal. So over on your paper now, you're going to have, you've got all your work here. You might have to go to the back side of your paper. You might have to go to a new sheet. So let's say I got a clean sheet here. I'm on the back side. So let's put down 3, and let's put down here red triangle. Okay, so we're trying to prove whether this is a perpendicular or a right angle. Is there a right angle in this triangle? So to see if we have a right triangle. So put the heading down red triangle, and let's go back now. Take a look. Which 2 sides look like they might form a right angle? Which 2 sides look like they might form a right angle? Now play it over on your paper. Over on your paper, for those 2 sides, put down the names. Put down the word slope. Write down the word slope. I would write down the word slope. Okay? And you put down those 2 sides. I'm not going to tell you what those are. Take a look there. Put down the heading slope. and put down the names of the two sides. And the names of the sides are either EG, EF, or FG, but you need two of those three sides. You need to find the slopes to figure out, especially the corner that looks like it might be a right angle. Figure out, do you have sides that have the opposite sign and have numbers that are reciprocal? And once you find that out, that's all you need to figure out for number 3. Bring it to me and show it to me when you get done with number 3. Pause the video here, go ahead and do your work, and we'll check it over. Now let's look at number 4. I want you to write the equations for the 3 sides of the triangle. This is the exact same thing you were doing over here in number 2, where you wrote the equations for all 4 sides of this rectangle up above. Okay, as you found out, this is a rectangle. Okay, so now what I want you to do is write the equations for the 3 sides of the triangle. So back on your paper, then you have your slope work down here, and you've determined whether it's a right angle or not. So slope, and be sure that you take a look at that. And after you do that, then I would put a new heading there, and I would put down, and I want you to put down, okay, equations, whoa, an extra capital Q, equations for the 3 sides of the triangle. And again, you want to label those equations. We want to have the side names correct. So you got the sides EF. So I'm going to label that down here. I'm going to label EF. Side EF. So I got that my work labeled for that. Okay. And then we're going to have side FG. So you want to leave a little space. And we want to put side FG. And then lastly, we're going to have side EG. So you'll have 3 equations there. Okay, I'm going to bring the video back to that triangle so you can see those sides, and then pause the video and write down and figure out the equations for all 3 of those sides. Again, you'll have pick a point from one of those corners. You've already found a couple of slopes. You might have to find the slope of one more side to do that. There'll be one side you haven't found a slope yet. You'll have to count that. So pause the video here, and again, use the point slope form. Turn it into slope intercept. We'll go from there. Pause the video here. Write your equations. All right, the last thing. I'm going to kind of turn you loose on this one. Number 5, describe why this polygon is or is not square. Hint, squares have opposite sides that are parallel and have 4 right angles. They have opposite sides parallel and have 4 right angles. So what I want you to do, think about it now. Opposite sides are parallel and 4 right angles. So you have to determine, I would suggest you find the slopes and use those slopes to tell you whether this is a polygon that is a square or not. And if you can find one pair of sides that isn't parallel, or if you can find a corner that's not perpendicular, that's not a right angle, that's all you have to find. You don't have to do everything then, because you only need one thing to tell you this is false. So if it's true, then you're going to have to find them all. And they'll all come out with opposite sides parallel, and then the corners will all be right angles. So put down number 5 on your paper, and then write down your proof. So I would suggest that you find your slopes. See if that can help you find it, and if so, then describe why this is or is not a square. I would pause the video here, and then take care of number 5. Lastly, number 6. There are 2 sides that aren't perpendicular, as I tell you down here. So that should give you a hint for your answer in number 5. But you got to have proof. You got to have your proof written down for number 5. There are 2 sides that are not perpendicular. See if you can write down the equations for a pair of sides that aren't perpendicular. And believe it or not, there's actually 3 different possible answers here. There's more than one corner that's not perpendicular. So see if you can find one of those pairs of sides that aren't perpendicular, and write the 2 equations. Make sure that they are one next to the other. I don't want opposite sides. We want sides that are they want the corners. So let me change that. Let me change this in here so I am clear with my directions. Write the equations for the two sides that are not perpendicular. I think I'll just leave it here. Tell how you know. Okay, I think I will leave it this way. Two sides that are not perpendicular. Well, perpendicular sides join at a point. So like for example, you're looking at which sides. There are four pairs of sides. Three of them aren't perpendicular. Write the equations for just pick one pair of sides and write the equations and tell how you know those two sides are not perpendicular. When you get done, then you're going to bring the sheet to me and we're going to turn all this work in. Then you are ready for a progress check. Good luck. Let me know what I can help you with.